Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. You know, our goal on this show is to bring you thought leaders who speak as a part of their revenue stream and people who have business models that may or may not be the same as everyone else's. And today, back by popular demand, is our guest expert, Joe Calloway. Welcome back, Joe.
Thank you, Jane. I love being here.
Well, you know, we have talked a number of times, and I don't know that we could ever truly run out of topics. Do you? There's so much.
No, I think we could go longer than anybody could stand it, believe me.
Yeah, they'd all be falling asleep at the other end, but we'd be having fun, and that's main thing.
We'd have a great time.
Okay, so I wanted to start today for those people who might be doing some of the things that you're going to mention with kind of like a little bit of a journey back in time. Now, we won't go super deep into each decade, but I just love, you've been in this business for how many years?
36 approximately.
36 years. Okay, so start us and kind of bring us through. Where did you start? And let's kind of talk about how much you were speaking every year and fees and stuff like that.
I started out actually doing training. It wasn't keynote speaking. It was workshop stuff that I wrote. And my first ones where I did a workshop on time management. I could do a half day. I'd do a full day. I did one on goal setting. And those actually, I think, were the two main ones. And I was just scratching and clawing, trying to get anybody here locally. And I started purely geographically. This was totally before the internet. So I was writing letters and just trying to get local business. And I did get some. Then I got a really good break with a big bank who brought me in to do some training, some customized sales training. And then they used me to do a lot of different kinds of training. They liked what I did, so they brought me back. And I know we had talked about looking at fee progression. And back then, and it was, oh my gosh, I was thrilled. I was making $500 a day. And I would do, there was one series I did for them where I did 3 hours in the morning, the same 3 hours in the afternoon for a different group. And I did that 3 days a week, week after week after week. They ran every employee in the bank through it. And it's like $500 a day. Are you kidding? It was all the money in the world. I was thrilled.
Well, when you come out of regular life and move into the speaking industry, $500 is a darn good fee. I mean, I think when we stop and just think about it, it's like, oh yeah, that was a big deal back then because it was probably more that you were making in your job. So the bank hired you almost like their in-house trainer.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
And then, and I think we'll see as you progressed from kind of training, which could be sometimes a commodity, into expert, kind of what happened. Okay, so what happened after that?
Well, the big thing that happened was the bank went through a reversal in their fortunes, and they cut out just about all external training. So, and they were about 75% of my income.
Yikes.
So I thought, well, what do I do now? And I started trying to get not training, but some speaking engagements. And I'd already been in the business for about 3 or 4 years before I really started going after keynote stuff. Got another big break. An AT&T group hired me to speak in Nashville after lunch for a regional group that had a bunch of branch managers. After it was over, just about every one of those branch managers from the Southeast brought me into their branch to speak. The word spread. I did the West Coast. I did the Northeast. I did North Central. I was working all over the country for AT&T. And it was kind of, Jane, just general business motivation. There wasn't a lot of business strategic or tactical content. They brought me in to fire up the troops.
But it's the classic case of what we call be good marketing,
Yeah.
where you go and you do one engagement and that turns into all kinds of spin.
Yeah.
Like, how many engagements would you say you got from that one?
200.
Wow.
Yeah. 3 years.
So,
Like
isn't that
3 years.
amazing? And you probably had no idea how much of a flashpoint that one speech would create for you.
None whatsoever. Uh, I just thought, well, they were nice.
I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Yeah, it was fine. And then I ended up going all over the country for AT&T. And at the same time, I was doing other clients here and there. And another flashpoint, a bureau came to see me speak. And oh my gosh, it was just one of those. I was speaking for Rollerblade.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a bureau in Minneapolis. And she came, and it was one of those speeches that everybody listening has had this experience. Everything I said, they thought was fabulous.
Wow. Was that
So
Renee or Chris?
it was Renee.
Renee
Although
Strong.
Chris
Okay.
was working for Renee, with
Uh-huh.
Renee.
Yep. Wow.
But it was just one of those dream come true jobs. And Renee said, well, I'm booking you. And then she told her other bureau buddies about me.
Right.
And so boom, although I have to say my very first bureau job was Brian Palmer's dad, John Palmer,
Oh, yeah.
booked me. And I was doing a little bureau work, but the big break came when Renee heard me, and that speech just went so well. So then bureaus became 90%
Okay.
as far as where my business came from.
And did the shift went from training to keynotes also,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And let's talk about the fees went from 500 to what?
Well, John Palmer got me my first, what I considered big keynote fee, and it was $2,500.
Okay.
And it was a fortune. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just huge. And you got to remember, we're talking 30 years ago.
Yeah,
And so 2,500 was really good. Before that, I'd been doing keynotes for 750, for 1,000. It was kind of a how much have you got?
Yeah.
One of those deals. But then when I started working a lot with bureaus, the whole you can't mess around with your fee. But you can't be quoting different fees, because if bureaus are booking you, you've got to have a fee that they all know that's what you charge.
Right, because if the bureau calls you and the client calls you direct behind their back, which does happen, we need to be always quoting the same fee. Okay, so let's talk about the evolution. So we go from training to keynotes, but let's also talk about evolution over time, because probably I met you shortly after this point in time, and you started to evolve your thought expertise. Like that really, what was the change? You were like a straight up motivational guy at one point, right?
Absolutely. And I made a very conscious decision. I said, and it was working great. I personally wanted to do business and talk about business strategy and positioning and creating a competitive advantage. So I made a conscious decision to shift from motivational to business. And a lot of people thought I had lost my mind because I kind of had to start over a little bit. It was a very different way of, it was a very different experience of speaking. I remember Nito Quabain. I was on a plane ride with him once. And for anybody that doesn't know Nito, he's just one of the pillars of the speaking industry and has been for forever. And Nito said, okay, so you've made the shift to business. I said, right. He said, I bet you're not getting standing ovations anymore, are you? I said, no, I'm not. He said, but I bet you may be the highest rated speaker.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if not often. And so it's a very different dynamic. I wasn't getting the immediate physical feedback of people laughing and, putting each other in the standing ovation. They sat there quietly and thought.
Right.
But, and this was always my standard. I was getting repeat business and spinoffs. And so that's how I knew it was working, is they said, we want you to come back and do this for another division. But anyway, Yeah, and I started then an evolution of different business topics. And I
And
tended
that
to,
all kind of spun from becoming a category of one book, right?
well, not really. I started doing pure business speaking before category one. I did customer service, I did branding, I did a change, uh, how organizations can change. But
Right.
then in 2004, I came out with my first published book, which was Becoming a Category One, and kaboom! That, holy moly, that changed everything.
So another flashpoint,
Yeah.
and the reason becoming a category of one was such a success, you kind of let go of a lot of the products and books and things that you had done before that. I think you had some self-published books and things that were selling
Yep.
quite well, actually, but
Yeah, they were doing okay.
they were doing okay, but you let them go. And why do you think that book did so well and was such a game changer for you?
Well, one thing was, and Harvey McKay talked about this after he came out with swimming, how to swim with the sharks without being eaten alive.
Mm-hmm.
He used to talk about the importance of the title of the book. Becoming a Category One just struck a chord. I don't even remember how I came up with the title. And then the cover was 5 red apples and 1 green one.
Right.
And the idea was, how do you get to be the green apple? How do you set yourself apart? And it was just such a simple message. And there were so many businesses that said, that's what we want. How do we set ourselves apart? And it was a good book.
Yeah.
And I just came out with my 8th book. And 2 or 3 of them have been really, really good books.
Well, congratulations. I'm getting ready to do number 5, and I'm not stuck, but I'm slow to get off the mark. Let's call it
So
that,
trust
because
me, I've been there so many times.
you really want to have the idea kind of firmly planted before you begin, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're scrambling. You've helped me.
And,
You don't even know how much you've helped me with my books, Joe.
well, thank you. I hope so. I'm glad to hear that. Let me tell you the thing about books. And speakers over the years have called me and said, I've got a book. How do I get a publisher? Da, da, da. And I've said, wait a minute. What do you want the book to accomplish?
Right.
Well, I want to sell it in the back of the room and make money, which is a totally legit thing to do.
Right.
Well, my first question is, why in the world do you want a publisher? If you're going to just sell it in the back of the room, you don't need a publisher.
Make all the
Do
money
it yourself and keep all the money. My strategy has always been, I want my book. I want somebody to read my book and say, get this guy for our next meeting.
Yeah.
I want the book to position me as a speaker. And I'm not all that worried. I mean, I have to sell enough to keep the publisher interested in wanting to do another one. So sure, I want to sell a lot of books, but my books have been designed to get me more speaking and consulting and that kind of business. I've got a slightly different strategy with the new one, but we can talk about that.
Okay. So different shift when you decide, I want this book to be not a book that follows you out of an engagement and you sell back of the room, but a book that leads you into the engagement. So it's a book that we want to, and so you want to level it up, and you do a lot of things to really get that book noticed. And I think your books are probably in airport bookstores and things like that where people traveling will be. Am I right?
Yeah, a number of them have been. I spent about $150,000 promoting Becoming the Category One. Jane, I had ads in Forbes and USA Today. And when you see books, if you see my book in a bookstore, it's because I paid in not Barnes and Noble, but the airport bookstores.
Yeah.
You have contracts with them.
Yep.
Unless your book is already a bestseller. Jim Collins doesn't have to pay them for his books
But
because
once you're getting the traction, sometimes you have to pay to play. And I think that number is very helpful for people to realize that getting to the bestseller list is a difficult thing. Now, something big happened as a part of that and you got reviewed. Who reviewed your book and that made a big difference?
Well, Publishers Weekly did the first review of becoming a category one. And here's the thing. I made a number of bestseller lists, but not one. I didn't make the New York Times or Wall Street Journal or USA Today. I didn't do a big buy my own book campaign that a lot of people do to get on the list. My strategy was, if it is hopefully a really good book, then I'm going to position myself not by saying Joe was on the New York Times bestseller list for 1 week, but by saying, here are the reviews he's gotten. And the New York Times reviewed my book.
Nice.
And Publishers Weekly reviewed my book. And so I spun those reviews into the whole credibility package that helped me get jobs.
So your credibility, as we've traveled through time here, just keeps raising and raising and raising and raising. Okay, so you go into business and you've evolved with these 8 books over lots of different topics, and just kind of give us the Reader's Digest version of where you started with. Let's start with becoming a category 1 and where you're sitting today.
Yeah, becoming a category 1, and then indispensable, how to become the company your customers can't live without, which was kind of a continuation of the same thing. Then a book that I went kind of off track. It was, the Joy book.
Do the work you love?
No, not Do the Work You Love. But it was, I can't remember the name of it. But here's the problem with that book, Jane.
You stepped outside of your lane.
And, it didn't know whether it was a business book or an individual person book.
Right.
Is this a motivational book for individuals, or is it a book that a manager would buy for all of her employees? It didn't know what its identity was.
Okay.
So then I went on and wrote other books. Magnetic, the art of what was the art of attracting business.
Yeah.
That was about how to use customer word of mouth to create more business, and that created a whole new kind of slice for me. Be the best at what matters most. That was a good book. That's was fun. About culture in large part. And so, each book, while they were all along the lines of what is it that great companies are doing to set themselves apart, that's kind of the central theme through all of them. But I take a slightly different angle with each one.
Gotcha. And I think it's interesting that the Joy book was kind of your little, and it wasn't that maybe you stepped outside of your lane. It was just perhaps that it didn't quite fit as nicely under the umbrella.
Exactly. Work like you're showing off.
Work like
you're showing off. And that's a tip for everybody, me included. Get real clarity about who you're writing the book for and how it's going to be relevant to them and what value it's going to do. Now, there's a whole different strategy if the purpose of your book is just to sell in the back of the room. Larry Winget used to say, I sell souvenirs. Now, Larry's strategy changed.
Right.
And he wrote books that, people wanted to read every word.
Right.
But a long time ago, he said, I sell souvenirs. And they don't even read it. They just want to take something home from Larry's speech.
Right.
So, and he did. He made a ton of money doing that.
Right.
But that's a very different strategy than writing a book for people to actually consume and use the content.
Yeah, I think the good question to ask, do I want it to lead me into a speech or follow me away from a speech?
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, that's a good one. So the Wealthy Speaker 2.0, I'm thinking about writing the prequel to that, which is about getting into the game of speaking. so you want to be a speaker. Here are the things that you need to be thinking about and building your thought leadership and things like that. What do you think about that?
I think that's perfect. And you have written a book. You are a classic example with the wealthy speaker. I mean, give me a nickel for every time I've said, well, wait a second. I'm happy to talk to you about speaking, but before you do anything, you need to go buy a book called The Wealthy Speaker, because that will give you a baseline of the business and how the business operates. So you've got a book with content that people use that creates value for them. And so it causes other people like me to say, you need to buy this book.
Right. And I appreciate that for anybody who has been recommending the book. Thank you so much. I have massive amounts of gratitude. And people who are pretty big in the speaking industry will say, oh, yeah, I recommend your book all the time. And I didn't even know. So if this is a mass gratitude, and thank you to all of those, as well as yourself, Joe, you were really pivotal for that book's success. And thanks for writing the foreword. Okay, so let's fast forward to what you're doing now. When we talk about someone's evolution, I would call yours rapid evolution, because no moss grows on you, Joe Calloway. You never stay in the same place for very long. Talk about that just for a minute and why you think you evolve to the degree that you do. I mean, it's all kind of under the same umbrella, but you really...
It's not part of a grand business plan. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
It's because I get bored so easily.
Okay.
Honestly, Jane, more than anything else, that's it. And
the good news is, though, your clients, do they come along with you? Or do you have to keep getting new clients each time?
Both.
I don't think so, right?
No, both. I've got a lot of clients that have come along with me. Now, it'll change. When you raise your fee, you're going to lose some clients, but you'll gain some new ones. When you change your topic, you're going to, again, you'll lose some, but some will stay with you. There are some, listen, I'm going to do one next week. And I've been working with this client for, 10 years. And she said, I want you to come in and do an hour and a half, real conversational, 90 people, top leaders in the company, and I want it to be about your new book. And I said, my new book's not available yet. She said, I know, but I want to buy a copy for everybody, and whatever it is, that's what we want you to talk about.
Wow.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's pretty cool, where they say,
very cool.
What we're talking about now, we want to hear it.
So the new book is called The Leadership Mindset. What's the subtitle on that, Joe?
How today's successful business leaders think.
How today's successful business leaders think. And so talk about, so all this time you had been doing keynotes, fee going up and up and up, 10, 15, 20K. What does your next version of Joe Calloway look like?
Much, much smaller audiences. I don't want to do 5,000 people. I just say no. If somebody calls and says, it's a done, if a bureau calls and says, Joe, it's a done deal, 5,000 people, they want you, I say, that's not what I do anymore, because I've gotten very interactive. And most all the bureaus know this now. Mm-hmm. I'll do 500. I'd rather do 300. I'd rather do 100. Last week, I did a group of 19 business owners, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Now,
so getting in deep, going deeper.
Going in deep, and it's for well, I don't know. I'm shifting my fee a little bit. There are some that I do for actually a lower fee that I was doing keynotes for, but that's because generally workshoppy stuff is a slightly different marketplace.
Right.
And it does tend to get a lower fee. I'm fine with that, because I've got some other endeavors that are going well. But I really want to do workshop. It's funny, I'm in keynote slots a lot, but it's billed as an interactive keynote. Mm-hmm. And it even feels a little bit workshoppy. There's just a lot of back and forth between me and the audience.
Isn't
And
this
that's what I
interesting?
love to do now. I just don't want to do all the talking anymore.
It's not entirely full circle because I'm sure way back you were doing like full days and two
Yeah.
days and things like
But
that. But
a little
it's
bit.
interesting. You're almost digging into your training roots here,
Yeah.
facilitating, and you really want people to start to see change happen. And so, okay, so more workshopy, more interactive type keynotes. Let's talk about, you've evolved your own speaking style over the years.
Yeah.
What have you kept and what have you let go of?
Well, in the early days, if somebody said, listen, Joe, I want to market you as a rock star speaker, that would have been a good fit because I was big on stage. I mean, I was big and I was all over the place and big gestures, and it was just this kind of over the top, and everybody was laughing, and it was a show.
Yeah.
And then as I went into business, it got quieter, and I didn't move around as much.
You're
And
just having a
now
conversation.
now, I mean, there are people that will come up afterwards and say, that didn't feel like a speech at all. And I say, well, good. I didn't mean for it to be. Listen, not that there's not still a place for a keynote speaker that owns the room, mesmerizes the audience, and is a dynamo on stage. Oh my gosh, of course there's a place for that. It's just not what I do.
Right. Let's talk about it kind of like an evolution from it being a performance to then a conversation, and now you're getting even into more interaction. So the conversation is even pumped up even more. Well, congratulations. I think that's super cool.
Thanks.
And
Yes.
and I've talked about the importance of team and that type of thing in terms of growing your speaking business, but you've been a one-person operation this entire time. You've got people that help you with video and websites and things like that, but really you have not had a massive team around you this entire time. Let's talk about that a little bit. That's been a very specific choice that you've made.
Yeah, it is. I did have. Now, Annette, my wife, and I worked together for a few years, and she then even opened her own bureau, the Alexander Agency.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was handling a lot of the booking and stuff, and then she got kind of bored with it and wanted to go do something else, and she did, and that was fine. And I did have another employee for just a short time, and it's funny, every now and then somebody will say, "Well, how do you do everything yourself?" And I say, What is there to do? This is the simplest business on the planet. Now, there are people, David Avern comes to mind, who's been doing a lot for NSA as far as marketing. David has got a first-class marketing operation. Yeah. He's got a first-class person that does that with him. And if that's your business model, then that makes all the sense in the world. There are other people that either in-house or they will be with a management person or something is, I don't want to do the travel. I don't really want to deal with the client. All I want to do is think about the speaking.
Show up. Yeah. And you could have really done that, but it was never really your goal to have that many speeches. I just want to make a note. We'll put it in the show notes, but we do have a podcast with David Avern to go deep into that whole sales process. So what is your goal, and how many speeches do you even want to do each year? How many?
If I do, I don't know. And again, they're not really speeches anymore. They're engagements. But I'll do this year, if I do 35 or 40, I really don't want to do more than 50.
Right.
Because as I said, I'm also involved in some other things that have nothing to do with speaking that are a lot of fun for me.
Right. And I think that that's noteworthy because some people will say, okay, let me develop other revenue streams so that I can continue to build my wealth and not just trade my time for money. Whereas you have said, I'm going to invest in other things. Let's talk about what all you're noodling in now.
Well, I was very fortunate.
Okay.
Yeah, I had the restaurant for 10 years, and that ended up over a 10-year period being I broke even. I
Okay.
didn't make any money. I didn't lose any money. And
We had lots of good dinners.
it was really cool and a lot of fun. But I'm really fortunate. I'm involved in two different real estate groups, and we will build condos. We will buy apartment complexes and get everybody out of them and completely rehab them and then raise the rents and then sell the apartment complex a few years later. The thing that's so much fun is I was one of the initial investors, and now I'm on the board of directors, and I am the business strategist for Gilson Snow, which is a snowboard and ski manufacturing company.
Right.
And that is doing really well. And it's a startup. We want to grow it and see where it goes and see what happens down the road.
That industry, what is the growth in that industry? It's got to be quite massive, hey?
Winter sports is a good industry. We're looking right now, we would love to break into, of all things, the China market.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Chinese government has decided to really promote winter sports. So we'll see. That's a very complicated walk to do that, but
No doubt.
we're working on it. And then I've also invested in a couple of other startups that are involved in totally different things, and so that's fun for me. And it's all with 20 somethings. It's all
Wow.
with kids that are way smarter than me, work way harder than I ever did, and they all think I'm Yoda just because I'm so old. They think means I'm kind of smart. Like I say, the secret is they're way smarter than me, but I love the energy of hanging out with 20 somethings in a business
Right.
relationship. It kind of feeds me. And so that's fun for me.
That's awesome. So really a very, very different business model from what we often see in our industry. And I just really wanted to identify that for people, because if someone is, let's say, they see themselves on this treadmill, maybe they're out working for a seminar company
Yeah.
and they can't get out from under the 80 engagements a year. That was your life at one time.
I
And
worked
look
for
at,
one of those seminar companies.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that it's possible, and we're here to tell you that anything is possible. This is a business.
Which, Jane, I think is one of the coolest things about our business.
Mm-hmm.
There are 1,000 ways to do it. I mean, there's so many ways that you can make this business work for you.
Yeah.
And it's almost unlimited. And I think that's just one of the huge advantages of doing what we do.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think is the most fun that you have ever had in this business?
It's been engagements, and I've got one coming up where a company will hire me for the entire duration of their 2 or 3 day event, and I'm on stage a bunch of times as kind of the thread that
You're the
holds it
glue that
all
holds it all
together.
together.
I'll
Nice.
do interviews. I'll do 15 minutes, and then an internal speaker will do an hour, but I'll set them up with an
Right.
outside perspective. For me, a project like that is so juicy creatively
Right.
that's jazzy for me. That's fun.
That's
I'm also coaching some entrepreneurs and business owners now, and I really like doing that.
And I think that you hit the nail on the head about that whole creativity thing. I think for you, that's the reason why you have done,
Yes.
why you have different balls in the air and different things, is because you're really always craving. You must have like an
Yeah.
extra dose of creativity in your brain that you just need to spend somewhere.
Yeah, it's true.
So, what's something that you wish you would have done or learned sooner?
I wish I had made that move away from traditional keynotes sooner.
Mm.
Um, you know, here's the trouble. I'm a classic example of somebody that got kind of stuck doing something they were good at.
Ah, yes.
And I'm always advising other people not to.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
I was.
Don't get stuck doing things you're good at. This is where I got the line was from you. I don't know if it originated with you, but it's an important note.
Yeah, it really is. And it's hard when something is working really well and making a lot of money, to say,
Mhm.
well, I'm going to not do that so much and I'm going to try something that I don't know if it's going to work or not.
Right.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's just a really hard thing to do. But uh, for me, that's where the jazz has been, is in constantly moving on to another thing. And Jane, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
I was going to ask, is there, let's say somebody else is thinking about doing something that will evolve them into a new lane or a new offshoot of their existing lane. Do you think there's an easier way to do it? Not where you say, I'm not doing that anymore, but where you start to maybe educate a few of your bureau partners or people who are booking you to say, this is what I'm doing, and just kind of quietly do the transition rather
And
than.
actually, that's the way I've done all my transitions,
Okay.
is
All right.
exactly the way you just said it.
Okay.
It's like, okay, I want to move from traditional keynotes to workshops. I still did traditional keynotes. I
Yes.
just did less and less of them, and you really hit it. Part of it was educating the market
Right.
about this new thing. And so it takes a while for the market to catch up and go, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. And yeah, I think I've got one that fits what you're doing now. So yeah,
Good. All right.
it's a transition.
We have known each other for over 20 years in this business. I
Yep.
really have a massive value for community.
Yeah.
And let's just talk about what it's meant to you to have so many really great speaker buds.
Yeah, my best friends, and this is true for a lot of us, I think, and it's true for anybody in any business, maybe, but my best friends are other speakers.
Mm-hmm.
My let me read you the dedication in my new book. Hang on, let me open it up. Here's the dedication page. To my friends John Bledsoe, Scott McCain, Randy Pennington, Mark Sanborn, and Larry Winget. It's a rare thing. And they are my very, very best friends. And we're spread out all over the country, but thank goodness for the internet and email. And we do make an effort to get together as often as we can. And, and then there's people that I go back forever with, like Lisa Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you, Chris Young. And it's gone way beyond any kind of business relationship, and we're friends.
Yeah, for sure.
If you needed help, who would you pick up the phone and call? I'd call you. I'd call Larry. I'd call my buds.
Yeah.
And it's been a great thing.
That's good. I appreciate and value it so much, and I really don't ever want to forget what an amazing industry I was so fortunate to stumble into 30 plus years ago. We have an awesome community filled with just amazing people.
Yeah.
I just feel such gratitude for that.
Joe
Calloway, once again, you have given us so much great food for thought. We are going to be chomping on this for quite a while to come, and I want to say thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. This is, as we said at the start, I could do this with you every day.
So fun. Let's talk about where people can get your book and the name again.
The name of the book is The Leadership Mindset, and they can get it on Amazon, or I've got a direct link to Amazon on my homepage.
Okay.
So they can go to joecalloway.com. And that, by the way, they can look and see how what I'm doing is different. My video on my homepage does not have me on stage at all.
Right.
And that's a bit of a departure. So
talking about the mindset. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast, hey, leave us a review and a rating, please. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of the powerful content that we have here with our thought leaders on the Wealthy Speakers Show. With that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speakers Show. please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.